Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business. Looking forward to talking to David Chernow, principal at Brightwing, also Trichem Corporation, but we're also talking about his lifeintroduced.com writings. David, it's always good to see you. Thanks for taking time to talk with me today in the Think community. You know, I'm so impressed with just the life introduced and all of the writings that you've done. And I thought we could talk a little bit about today. You know, you're producing a ton of content. You are into your 59th week. And I think sometimes when people sit down to create content, they think, how am I going to get past week 3 or 4 or 10? And you're doing it on a pretty consistent basis. And so I thought we could talk about, you know, for those who are looking to build content, the type of kind of mindset you put yourself in to get into flow, to write and to produce as much content as you do.
That's a great topic.
Yeah, there we go.
Great topic. You know, after the third week, I was like, there's no way I have enough content to even come out with the 4th or 5th week. And I think I was concerned about that, and I started to just let it go. And I felt that I was just going to see where it took me as far as creating content. And whenever I stopped, I stopped. If I stopped at the 11th week, I was going to stop at the 11th week. I set a goal for myself to do 64, but if it wasn't there, it wasn't there. And 59 weeks later, I don't know how I have an idea of how they pop up and how I've created the content. But I would have never foreseen that at the beginning. And I can tell you some of the things I do to create the content. Yeah. So, you know, I think I put together a little ritual for myself. I think that was important, getting the ritual together so that I did the same thing every Monday night. And that a lot of times would create the content. A lot of times, and it does create the content for me. And I can come in on Tuesday, I can write, and then I can post it on Wednesday. Sometimes it doesn't happen on Monday night, and I'll go through the same process on Tuesday night. And then I'm coming in Wednesday and I post it on Thursday. I've always tried to post it on Wednesday, latest Thursday, my content. But the ritual seems to work, and I don't know why it works. It just sort of works. And so I think maybe part of the reason why it works so good is I don't have an attachment to the outcome of any of this. And I think a lot of times when we create that outcome for ourselves, a lot of times that outcome doesn't happen. And so I try to release from the outcome, and I think that's definitely helped me. I have not tried to control the content, control the outcome of that content. In fact, when I sit down to write after I sort of get the subject matter, it's a 2 or 3 hour session, and that's it.
Yeah.
I rarely go back over 2 or 3 days and recraft the content. I rarely do that. It just comes out in a 2-3 hour period, and then it's posted.
Yeah. I love everything that you're talking about. You know, it is, I think for, you know, Think community, we talk a lot about this is, you know, rituals, routines. You know, when I wrote my book, David, I did exactly that. It took me about 9-12 months, and every Sunday night I wrote at almost the same time. And I would meet with my co-writer on Sunday night, and we'd kind of like connect. We'd map things out, what the plan was. It was a pretty consistent flow. And so I just, you know, and so Think community is anything that you're planning out, and we talk about a lot of stuff on the show. I think anything that you can commit to a routine works. But here's the difficult part, I think. The discipline to keep the routine going. And so I kind of want to know what your mindset is when to just keep going. I think that's the hard part. That's where people fall off, right? So it's like you say, well, this week I have this, so I'm not going to do it. This week I have this, and all of a sudden you blink and, it's 4 months, 6 months, a year, et cetera. So how do you stay disciplined?
So that's a really good question. That's a really good question, because I will tell you, there have been many times where the week gets away from me and I'm like, I just can't do it. There's been many of those times where it's already a little bit deeper into the week and I got to make something happen. And you're right. And so that here's part of it. It's interesting. The content that I feel has created some of the more the deeper content that I've created have come in those times. The time where I'm like, I don't want to sit down. I just want to do whatever I'm doing, and I don't want to do it, or the week has gotten away from me and I don't have the time. It's those times that I'm clawing to try and find content that if I just release and go through my process, which I'm going to tell you what that process is.
Yeah.
I've had some really deep thoughts, and it's created some pretty deep content. And so I think that part of the lesson is that it's the time when you're getting at something and you're continuing and you're not seeing the results that you want, that maybe the result is right around the corner, but you can't really see it. And you have two options. One path is to move on and stop. The other path is to push forward. And you'd be surprised at what happens if you push forward. It's so tough to push forward. Yeah. The discipline, the commitment to do it. I know I committed to 64 of it, and really, one of the things that I had talked about in one of my narratives was the idea that I quit so many things as a child, John. I had quit so many things as a child. Everything from sports to this, to that, to the other thing. It was so easy to not push through and just quit. And that was one of the things that I'd really, was one of the things I regretted in this, being a little bit older right now, was the things that I had committed to that I had quit because I wasn't seeing the results that I thought I should be seeing. And when we become so results oriented, it's hard to keep going because you're not seeing the results. And so that was part of the reason why I said, from the beginning, that I've tried to detach from the outcome and results of things and just focus more on the process, which I will tell you, my process is pretty simple, John. Wow. I can't believe I called you Don. We've probably spent the last month together almost every day.
Yeah, I know.
I see the little John, and then
it happens. It happens. Your name is David. I'm John. Right.
You're John. I'm David. Right.
Right.
Okay.
We'll sidetrack for a quick second. The last time you were on the show, you talk about just kind of surrendering to the outcome. The last time you were on, we were talking about Life Introduced. After the show, we talked about kind of a mutual idea that we each had, which is going to spur into its own business. And so Think Community, I would have not thought that I would be starting a business with David just from a conversation. I mean, and so when you talk about detaching from the outcome, I think it's, I've been talking to my therapist about that and some of the spiritual people that I go to, Buddhist monk, etc. A lot of the readings that I do talk about detaching from the outcome. That's kind of, I think, hard to understand if someone's listening and hearing that for the very first time. And so kind of dive into that a little bit. And then one quick thing I'll just share is, to your story, I had a session with my therapist on Saturday morning, and I called him for one reason that I didn't need him anymore for. So I said to my wife, I have nothing to talk to him about. And she said to me, it'll be your best session. And it really was, because when you have nothing, that's when you can really get to something big. So, but talk a little bit more about just kind of how, like the first step of like, we'll get into your routine, but how to detach from an outcome.
Yeah. So that's a really good question. So it takes years of sort of practice, right? I think the idea is that um, we necessarily can't see the blueprint that is our life, and if if you look at that blueprint, you realize that for all intents and purposes, there is no time. We live in a physical reality where we have created this time and space aspect. And so we experience time linearly, right? So we experience the present moment. We know what happened in the past, and we know that anything that happens after this present moment is the future. But in reality, there is no time. And so all of this is happening simultaneously. We experience it linearly because if it happened all simultaneously, I don't think we could handle it.
Yeah.
And so what happens is when we start to create expectations for events that are happening, we dis we disallow all the other options that could happen from this event. A lot of times, things happen in a chain format where, and it just happened last night, for instance, where something you have an action and you expect this outcome to happen. But the truth of the matter is, John, is that a lot of times those events aren't happening for what you think they're happening for or why they're happening.
Right.
They're happening for a totally different reason. Last night, I went downstairs to go find something, and I couldn't find it, and it sent me on a treasure hunt to go find this thing, and I found that there was a little there was a thing in the basement that I had to fix, and I had to polyurethane foam, but I would have never found that had I found that thing exactly when I want to. And then I went to here, to there, to there, to there to find out that I had to fill this hole in the basement, and I would have never found it had I not gone through the whole process. It seems like life happens that way too. My wife had some surgery, and through a chain of events, we had found that she had like a mole in an area that we would have never found had a few chain of events not happened. And so I think that sort of is the idea, right? That we have very little understanding of why events are happening. And if we start to create expectations or results for those events, we then nullify all of the events that could or should have happened, and we're focusing on one part of that event, and we want focusing on one part of that result, when really the reason for it happening is totally not within our understanding.
Yeah.
That might really be hard to understand, John. I'm not sure I put that in the simplest.
I think it's great. But I love the way that you explained it. I think it's maybe a first step of that is just to begin to kind of zoom out as an observer of things. I think if you can kind of, when you're in a situation, I do my best to do this. It doesn't work every time, but really zoom out, and instead of being in something, zoom out to be an observer of something, and know that it's like almost kind of a movie playing out, and you just don't know where the character ultimately is going to end up. But if you just kind of surrender to things just happening, then the reason will just kind of, show itself when it's supposed to show itself.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it. Right. It reveals itself when it's supposed to reveal itself.
Right.
And if in the movie analogy, you can't go from act 1 to act 6, right? You miss
Correct.
you miss half the movie, right? And so a lot of times when we're creating those outcomes, we want to go from act 1 to act 6,
Right.
the last scene of the thing, and we've taken away all of the beauty, which is the journey in the middle.
Right. And you got to pay attention to the whispers along the way. You got to pay attention to it. And if you try to overly figure it out, and then, you sometimes get in your own way. So, no, I thought it was a great explanation. All right, let's go back to kind of your flow of discipline.
It's a very simple flow. And I don't know. I mean, the formula happened early on in the process. So I actually meditate. It's a little different, but I meditate in the bath. And so every night I meditate for probably 20, 30 minutes in the bath, and for some reason the subject reveals itself, and actually the dots start to connect. So it's not just enough to have the subject, because I could sit here with the subject, and if I don't have some of the other dots connected with where that subject matter goes, I could sit here for 5-6 hours and it'd go nowhere. And so a lot of times the dots reveal themselves in that 20 or 30 minute meditation, which actually is an attempt to try. Meditation in and of itself is an attempt to try to get you to a blank space, right? That space that we talked about, where we have nothing to talk about, and what are we going to talk about? And it just sort of happens. That's essentially what meditation is, right? You're getting out of your headspace and more into that metaphysical, higher consciousness space. And then things start to reveal themselves. And so it's not just that I get the subject in those meditations. I actually start to be able to visualize where I can take it to and what the end result is. And sometimes the end result is not the end result. Sometimes that's just another step. And when I'm writing, the end result just comes out. But as long as I have a little bit of the blueprint, I start to write, and it crafts and it reveals itself. And I think you nailed it, Jon. It reveals itself.
Yeah.
Just something happens and it reveals itself. That's when I've got the deepest content.
Yeah, it's I find the same thing happens with me many times. It kind of flows through you, and it's almost like you don't even know where it's coming from. It's and I think the more you can, I've been meditating since I was in my kind of mid-20s, and it's a great gift. It's a great gift, and I highly recommend it a lot on the show to clients, to this. But it is to get to a blank space where you can, even for 20 seconds, get to that kind of that space. Feels great. And you can get great. I get some of my best ideas when I'm meditating. I was watching an interview this morning with Pharrell. He takes a bath 1 hour every day, he said.
I love it.
Yeah. He does like his whole meditation. Like he was talking about his morning routine. I can't remember it exactly, but he prays, he meditates, or he meditates and or prays. I think he goes for a short walk, and then he takes a bath for an hour. Something like that. That's kind of like his morning routine. Something like that.
Yeah, that's great.
So
I did want to say one thing.
Yeah.
Listen, just the way that you crafted these podcasts, right? I think it really exemplifies everything that we've been talking about. You at least the time before and this time, you're not coming at me with sort of a pre-planned sort of formula for the success of this. I think that this is a perfect example of allowing things to unfold.
Yeah.
Right? You'll intuitively you get a thought, and you'll throw it out there, and it creates a conversation. Yeah. And it goes to a place that you never, and I'm speaking for you, but it seems like you don't know where these conversations are going to go.
No.
And they just go.
Right. I never prepare a question ever. The only thing I do is I get kind of a vibe of what I want to talk about. So like with you, when we started, I said, I'd like to talk about just kind of like flow state. And then I just kind of take it from there. But I only said it to you because we're friends. If I don't know the person, I don't even tell them. I don't tell the person, hey, I want to talk about X. I just start because I don't even want them preparing a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. I want it to be organic.
That's exactly how I do my blog, John. That's exactly how I do the blog. That's exactly how it comes out.
Yeah. It's good. So it's a great way to do it. It's a great way to do it. All right. I want to go back to 64 before we get to a speed round. So you're almost done.
Yeah.
And so, what's the ritual of closure once it's done?
I don't know. Do you know? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I got five more, and I don't know. I don't know what that looks like.
Well, I asked for a couple reasons, because when I wish someone would have asked me that question, because when I got done writing my book, it was I was really I went through a really kind of like, it was a very sad experience for me. I poured so much into my book. There's so many of pretty much every character is extracted from my life. A few of the characters are pieces of me. My mentors, my father is a main character. All of these like things, and so I put so much into it that when I was done, I thought I would be really excited, and when I was done, I was kind of, I don't want to say I wasn't clinically depressed, but I was really sad for like like a month or two, because it just took so much out of me, but I didn't realize it until I was done.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't really thought about the closure part and what happens when I'm done and I don't have to go through the process to write every week. Because I would have. I think that's something I really haven't thought about.
Yeah.
I'd like to continue to create, though. I think that there's a lot more inside. And I had some ideas for how to create after that. And so I hope that I will continue to create.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. All right, let's do it. Well, I enjoy reading them.
I appreciate it.
And this, my son had surgery this summer, so he's kind of in a internship crafted by me. And part of it is reading Life Introduced as part of the 10 different sections, and he's getting a lot out of them as well. So it's great, and I appreciate Think Community. David's been on the podcast before, but if you haven't checked out Life Introduced, check it out. And instead of a speed round, I'll end with this. In your writings, you're very vulnerable, and I think that can be very tough for people, especially when you say detached from the outcome. You're really putting it all out there, and so what advice would you give people to be more vulnerable?
I don't know if it's advice as much as maybe a little bit of a state of mind. I feel like we are all people, and I think you will realize that you are not alone in whatever path or journey you're on. So many people can identify with what's going on in your life, but because we choose not to share those or communicate those deeper feelings, it seems like you're alone in the journey, and you're the only one going on it, and nobody can identify, and that couldn't be further from the truth. It's those moments that I've gone deep, and I've put it out there. And put it out there that I find that it resonates with people, and people say, oh my God, I had the same thing happen to me. I have the same feelings. I had the same set of whatever it was that happened to me. I think it opens up conversation, and you'd be really surprised to find out that so many people have those thoughts, the same thoughts as you're having, and have the same sort of experiences that you've had. And when you broach the subject and you put yourself out there, you'd be surprised at if you build it, people will come.
Yeah.
Right?
Well said. Thanks, David. That was
Thank you.
great. Think community. We talk a lot on the show about how we're talking to people and conversations and questions and sales and management and business and leadership and things of that nature. And I see this in clients that I coach, all over the globe. It doesn't matter if they're a salesperson, an owner, a C-level exec, a small, a solopreneur, a fortune company. It doesn't matter. Everybody thinks that their issues are only belong to them. And when they start to talk about it, what happens is they raise their own level of awareness and their own perspective begins to change. And that's where the work can really begin to evolve and make an impact. I see it in my own life with my coaches, and I see it in the clients that I coach. So I would encourage everybody to kind of raise your awareness, raise your frequency, be vulnerable, open up lines of communication. And I think one of the biggest obstacles people have is asking for help. I know it's been kind of a journey of mine to be able to really ask for help through my lifetime. I think I'm a lot better at it now than I have been in the future, in the past. But whatever your piece is, kind of dive in, and everything becomes easier. David, people can get.
I couldn't have said that any better, John. Honestly, you said it great. In fact, my left arm is itching. That means you nailed it.
Oh, thanks, brother. People can read your stuff at lifeintroduced.com. You're also talk for 30 seconds on your businesses, just so people can reach out to you if they want to learn more about your businesses.
Sure. So there's 2 or 3 companies that I own with my brother. One of them is a staffing and recruiting firm called Go Brightwing. Called Brightwing, not Go Brightwing. It's at gobrightwing.com, but it's called Brightwing. We also own a company that manufactures products that maintain mostly industrial manufacturing facilities, everything from the parking lot to the roof. We also have another company that manufactures personal care products, natural, organic personal care products, body wash, shampoos, laundry detergents, soaps that are all organic and natural. And that's called Alchemy.
All right, good. All right, so you can reach David at all of those links. You can read him at Life Introduced. Stay tuned for the business we're launching, which is going to be a focus for only 18 to 28-year-olds, give or take-ish. And David, this was great. As always, lifeintroduced.com. The community, if you need me, jondwoskin.com. Have an amazing day, everybody. David, thanks for the insights and the wisdom.
Thanks,
I'm always grateful.
Have a good one. Thank you.